Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Neil Taylor. I'm the senior trainer at Creative Hut. Just quickly, we're actually a STEAM education resource and training provider. And for those of you that are joining this course for the first time, quickly explain as well that Makeblock are basically one of our key partners. And they deal in all sorts of great resources to be used in STEAM education as a whole. You can see some of the examples of those on the screen now. So they actually generally deal in robotics kits that can be used from early years all the way up to further and higher education. You can see those examples here, but they also deal in lots of other great technology like 3D printers, laser cutters, which can be used for all sorts of different STEAM-based projects. But what goes hand in hand with those is free of charge programming or coding software called Makeblock, together with curriculum materials which will enable you to use this in the classroom or at home, wherever you are at the moment. And what they've also developed to support all of this is their STEAM board program. Just their platform to provide lots and lots of support to teachers and end users on all of the resources and kits they put together. So this does include online training, face-to-face training, lots of different teaching materials for all of the different resources and programming platforms that they supply. But what they've just put together recently is a fantastic tool for us to be all to be able to make use of in the situation that we're currently in. Because of course, at the moment, it's a bit more difficult to get our hands on the robotics kits. So they've actually put together a completely free of charge online training course, which enables you to make use of their free Makeblock programming software, which is great for helping us to teach our children and pupils how to program, how to code. And what goes hand in hand with that, of course, is the lesson materials to help you deliver all of this. So it is a brilliant tool to make use of while we can't get our hands on those robotics resources and other resources at the moment. So again, I know a lot of people have been joining us for all of the previous tutorials, but just to give a quick overview for those that are new to this, the course actually includes a total of 12 tutorials for 12 45-minute duration lessons. So we're delivering these tutorials to you as live webinars over the course of 4 weeks. Don't worry if you are just joining us. After this, we will make sure we send through all the links to where you can see recordings of the previous lessons, so the previous tutorials, so you can catch up on those. And we'll also give you access to all of the free of charge lesson materials to help you deliver these to your pupils, to your children. So that's going to be including the lesson slides, lesson plans, and example programs, which will be useful for you as part of that. Well, we'll be providing all of that for you directly. We would also encourage you to sign up directly with Makeblock on this as well. So we're working in conjunction with Makeblock on this. And via this link here, you can sign up with them, which will give you access to even be at better times for you. You'll also be able to access all the lesson materials via that link as well. Again, the lesson plans, slides, and example programs. You'll also get access to the full STEAM on Board community, where you'll be encouraged to share the work that you and your children have been doing and be able to view the work that others are doing. So it's a great place to share ideas, get inspiration, and of course share best practice and all of this. You'll also get the chance to give any feedback on this course and any future courses. So if you ever want to recommend any developments, additions, or changes to any of the materials and courses, you'll get the opportunity to do that. So I'll definitely recommend looking at signing up with that. And then the last point on this is that, of course, all of these lessons, the whole course in itself, is based on the Makeblock 5 programming software, which again, free of charge to download. You can do so at this link here. Don't worry if you've not got that installed yet. You don't necessarily need it open as we're going through this tutorial. And the link to this will be sent to you on email and is detailed in the Eventbrite listing as well. So you'll get lots of chances to access and download that. You can put that onto tablets, laptops, desktops, and stream it in a browser as well. So you should have no problem accessing the Makeblock 5 programming software. Okay, so again, we'll send through all of the information for this on an email for you after this webinar, but we can now start to look at lesson number 7, which is called a Parrot travel. And lesson number 7 is going to be focused on the use of if-then statements. So that might be something you're already familiar with. If not, we'll be looking at more detail in a moment. And we'll also be making use of conditions, okay? So conditional statements will be a big part of the focus of this lesson, but we'll be going into all that in more detail shortly. And again, for those of you new to this, these slides that I'm now using will be exactly the same slides that you'll be provided with to enable you to deliver these lessons to your children, to your people. So don't worry about making notes of everything you've seen on these slides. These will be provided to you at the end of the webinar. Before we go into the detail of lesson number 7, we always like to review some of the things that we've looked at on the previous lessons. So for those of you that joined us in lesson 6, you'll remember that we were looking at the penalty kick scenario, where we're getting Panda and Jordan involved in playing a game of football and trying to kick the ball into the goal, and sometimes it was going wide or hitting the post. And we were doing that by controlling the path or movement and direction of the sprites themselves. So that was the Panda sprite, the Jordan sprite, and the football sprite. And hopefully remember those blocks that we were using to do that. So just a quick recap though, we were using, of course, the glide block here, which enabled us to smoothly glide the sprites into specific positions that we wanted them to be at, using those X and Y coordinates on the stage area. We will also introduce the show and hide blocks, which basically, exactly as it sounds, really straightforward, enabled us to make sure a sprite was displayed or shown on the stage area, or we could hide the sprite within the stage area, depending on what worked best for us for the animation that we were creating. So hopefully everyone that remembers those will be using those a little bit again today. And for those that don't, again, you'll be able to look back at the previous videos to catch up on those. Okay, so today we're actually going to be introduced to a completely new friend. I'm going away from those scenarios of the sports scenarios like Panda's race and the penalty kick, and instead we're going to be introduced or using now our new friend here, which is Parrot. Okay, so this is our Parrot sprite, our new friend, and the scenario here is that the brave parrot called Geduo travels the world by himself, looking at all the beautiful scenes from across the world. And for commemorating this feat of travel, our teachers would like us to document it and create an animation or film all about the parrot's travel. Okay, so showing us where Parrot traveled to, what the places were like, and what his thoughts on them were. So that's what we're going to be working towards in this lesson. Okay, so we'll be looking at how we use if-then statements, conditional statements, and the use of some of the things we've been looking at before. So the use of different backgrounds, costumes within the sprites, speech and looks, all sorts of different things we'll be looking at how we can use within this lesson. Okay, so just to clarify that a little bit more, we can of course use the background to set up different scenarios for where Parrot is traveling to. But what we'll be looking at is if the parrot touches the edge of the stage area. So you can see we've got them circled here. Anytime the Parrot sprite touches these side areas, the background is going to change and Parrot is going to do or say something different. That's what we're going to be looking towards, and we'll be using those if, then, and conditional programming blocks to help us do all of this. So that is what we are working towards in this lesson. But before we get into the programming language, the programming element of this, we are now starting to get into quite complex levels of programming and quite complex blocks. So we're getting quite far into the progression on top of what we've learned before. So there's an unplugged activity we can carry out as part of this lesson to help introduce the pupils or the children to what they're going to be doing on the coding language itself. And the game that we've had suggested is a game called Squat. So it's really basic steps that we've got to carry out, but you can see it breaks it down into 2 simple stages here. So it's recommended we might have 3 to 4 students, but we can make this work with whatever numbers you've got to work with at home at the moment, whether you've got a group of siblings, or it might be you working with the children that you're working with at home, wherever you are. So you can adapt this to how it would be suitable, but it's basically encouraging the students to assign names of vegetables to each other as part of this game. So it might be that one person's called celery, another person's called cabbage, carrots, pea, sweet corn, whatever you want them to be or they want to be, they have to assign names to each other. And then we start to take it in turns. You can see it's not here, but it might be that the first person says, I'm celery and I'll squat. If you are cabbage, then you squat. So this is where you're starting to use, just in speaking amongst ourselves, those if-then statements. So me, by saying I'm celery and I'll squat, if you are cabbage, then you squat. So you're passing on that if-then statement to the person you're working with. And then it goes round and round. So they will then squat as they're doing it and encourage the next person. So they would take what you've instructed them to do. So they would then say, I'm cabbage, so I'll squat. If you are radish, then you squat. And we're just going round and round the group doing this. So hopefully that's making sense. It's definitely easier to do this in person with the people, but I'm sure you'll get to grips with this once you have a go. But it is just a nice unplugged way to introduce if-then statements to how we use warm-up activity. Gets us active at the same time as well, using those squat exercises, which is an added bonus. So hopefully we'll be able to have a go at this in the small groups you're working with as well. So again, we'll be sending you through the slides for those instructions, so don't worry about that. But once we've got through that and you're happy they've got a basic understanding of what those if-then statements are all about, we can move on to the next stage. And the key point we want to stress within this as well, that as part of those if-then statements, we'll also be using these conditionals, okay? So these are a big part of building into the program to getting the sprites and everything else to do what we want to do. So I just want to explain this with this overview here first of all. So this is how that if-then statement block is going to look in the coding language. So this is for judging whether a condition is met. So if a condition is met within this section, then do this. So this is like what we did before. If cabbage, then squat. Okay, so that's what this block is kind of symbolizing. So this proceeds to the sequential or next action within this. But to determine what this is, we use this block here, a conditional block, and you can find lots of different conditional blocks, but one of the main ones we're looking at first of all, you can find within the sensing block area. Again, you'll be able to see this in action in a moment. It would be that this conditional block would be in the if-then block here, and you would put what you want to do if that condition is met within here. And you can see a basic example of that taking place here. If touching mouse pointer, if the mouse pointer is sensing something being touched, then hide the sprite. Okay, so that is what the example is that we're going to be working towards next. Okay, so we'll start to build this up so you can get a better idea of exactly what we're talking about here. So the first part of this is simply bringing in a background. So hopefully everyone remembers how to do this within the programming software, but I'll quickly go to this and start to demonstrate this now. So I'm in my sprites tab at the moment, but I want to go to my background and add in that specific background. So I can do that by simply clicking add icon here. And I'm going to search for that specific one, which was grassland 1. As we've got here, hit OK, and that's now been built into my stage area. Okay, so simple as that for the first step. Next step is we want to start building the code for practicing with these types of blocks. So first of all, I want to get my when green flag clicked and then the loop forever block, which of course we were looking at in the last one. So I'm going to go back to my sprites tab now and start to build this code up. So I want my first part to be when green flag clicked. I also need a control block for my forever loop, like so. And the next stage was select the show and hide blocks from the looks tab. So I need to bring both of those into my script area now as well. I'm not going to build them up yet until we know exactly where we're going with these. So I'm just going to leave those in the script area for the moment. And then step 5, so now we're bringing in that if the first time, and we also want that first conditional block from our sensing block area, okay? So we're going to bring those together for the first time. So again, I want to go to my control tab first of all, bring in that if-then statement, then go into my sensing block area here, and I'm looking for that touching mouse pointer condition, and I can see now I can just pop that into that same shape area within the if then block. Okay, so I hope that's making sense so far. And now I want to bring all this together to create the full code as displayed here. So we first of all want to show the panda sprites, and then bring in the if-then statements and the hide block in amongst that. So I'm going to bring that into play. Show if-then and with the hide block in amongst that. Okay, so that's looking good. And so it goes. So let's see this in action. So hopefully that bit of code is making sense. I'll come back and explain it fully once we've seen it in action. Let's now go back to our stage area and program. So I'm going to click my green flag here. So that is now running, but if you might have already guessed where it's going, but it's basically using that sensing block for my mouse pointer. If my mouse pointer is touching the sprite, something's going to happen, which we'll see in action now. Okay, so you can see as I'm moving my mouse pointer back and forth, every time that mouse pointer touches the panda sprites, it disappears or hides exactly as we've asked it to do. So it's as simple as that to start using those if, then, and conditional statement blocks. Okay, so I hope that's making sense, but let's look quickly back at the codes. I'm going to stop that program as well. So we click the program, it started looping the code, but inside that loop, we first of all wanted to show the panda sprite. If there was then the mouse pointer touching the sprite, then hide the sprite, and then loop back to the start to show, and going all the way through that again if touch pointer the sprite. That's exactly what was happening in that demonstration then. So hopefully again that's making sense. So get the opportunity to have a go at this for yourselves as well, but it's again simple as that to start using those if then blocks together with that conditional statements. Okay, so we can start to move on to something a bit more complex. So there's another couple of blocks we're going to introduce you to, which are the bounce and rotation. So these are basically another couple of ways in which we can control the behavior of the sprite depending on what happens. Okay, so when that conditional statement is met. So again, I think these are fairly self-explanatory, but obviously, if on edge, then bounce, it basically means that if the sprite touches the edge of the stage, the edge area of the stage, it will bounce back and go the other way. But we can also control exactly what happens when it bounces the other way. So we can set the rotation style of the sprite. And I'll show you this in more detail in a second as well, but you'll see that there's lots of options within Arrow. But first of all, we're going to start to build this up. So we're going to use a couple of blocks that we're already using. So we're going to use the when, the green flag clicked, and forever block. But everything else within this we want to delete for the moment. So I can just drag those out, put them back to the block area and delete, and we can start to go into the next step. So this time we want to bring back one of those other blocks that we've used a lot before, the move 10 steps block. Okay, so we're going to use the move 10 steps block, and we're also going to use the wait for blocks. I'm not going to read through these step by step. I'm sure you can see those for yourselves, and of course you'll be able to look at these in more detail once you've got the slides, but we just need these two blocks to begin with. So for that move, I'm going to my motion tab area here. I want my move steps block, and I want to get my wait for block from the control block selection, and it did say to change that to 0.2 seconds. So you can see I've got my move 10 steps and the wait for block, which changed to 0.2 seconds below that move block. Next step is move that new block. So remember that Panda has multiple costumes which we can get him to change in between. So I need that now underneath my wait 0.2 seconds block. So let's do exactly that. And my looks tab area, sorry. So next costume is coming in next, like so. And now we need to bring in that if-then statement again. So again, we're using the if-then statement, but this time rather than the mouse pointer, we're going to have it touching edge. So let's bring in those for us now. So my if-then, go back to my sensing, and I want my touching block again, but from the drop-down menu, rather than it being the mouse pointer itself that we're sensing, it's going to be hitting the edge of the stage area like so. And all we need to do is then put all of these together. Actually, sorry, in a moment once we've got these next blocks. So we now need those next couple of blocks that we were looking at, the if on edge and the set rotation style. So let's get those from our motion block, and I need those from here. So if on edge, it will bounce, and set rotation style. Now you can see straight away that defaults to left to right, so it will be bouncing left to right across the stage area, but you can choose from these 3 different options. It can be either don't rotate at all, or it will rotate all around, and those will make more sense once you get a chance to experiment with those. But we've got that together now, and we just need to put that into our loop block like so, and we should be good to go. Okay, so I'll bring you back to those in a second, but let's see this in action first of all. So hitting green, Panda is going off the walk, switching between each next costume with that delay of 0.2 seconds for each. He's hit the right hand side of the stage and now has bounced back the other way to head off to the left hand side of the stage, and once he hits this, he will do exactly the same again. So easy as that to start using those bounce and rotation. So I'm going to stop that there for a second and go. So I just want to show you a couple of other ones in action as well. So let's say don't rotate at all. I'm actually going to speed them up for you a little bit as well. So let's change that to 0.1 rather than 0.2 and see that in action again, just to see the difference that makes. So you can see that's moving quickly, bouncing back, but now he goes backwards almost in moonwalking style, which in itself is quite cool, I think. But just to give you a quick introduction to how those effects differ. And now let's stop there and just very quickly, let's go for all around as well and just see how that affects it. So this time he's going to flip on his top. Of course, this is a space panda, so you might have that capability of being able to walk that way. Who knows? But so that's just give you a quick idea of how you can change that in different ways as well. Okay, so again, hopefully that's making sense of how we can start to use that if-then statement in different ways and how we can use those if on edge bounce change rotation style as well. Okay, so I think we've already gone through those different effects you can use. We've already had practice for those. You'll be able to do that for yourself with the pupils as well. But now we're having a look at what else we can do. So we would be at this point encouraging the children to change this in different ways to see what they can create for creating that documentation of the Parrot travel. Okay, so we want to start building this up in a lot more detail to help us tell the story of where Parrot's been, what he's seen, and what he thought about those different things. So these are the suggested requirements for what we want the children to create. So we want to use, rather than just the one background, so just in that demonstration there, we're using the grasslands background. We now want to introduce 5 different backgrounds to convey 5 different places that Parrot has flown or traveled to. So we also want to change the sprite that we're using from Panda to the Parrot character itself, and then some sort of story line for our program. And you could do that in different ways, but I'll explain that in a moment. So what I'm going to do now is, rather than build this up from scratch, because I did spend a little bit of time putting this together, and of course your children will be able to spend about 15-20 minutes, maybe even more, creating this for themselves. But I'm going to bring up an example of what you could do for this. So I'm going to bring up this one here. I don't need to say what I've been working on, so I'm going to ignore that. And this will load up. Okay, so this is what I have created, and I'll talk you through what's happening here in a moment. But straight away, just a couple of things to mention. I've now just used the Parrot sprite rather than the Panda sprite. So I'm sure you remember where to get this, but we can add in different sprites from the sprite library. You can search through different animals, or of course you can type in to search for the one you want. So that's exactly how I found that Parrot sprite to build into it. And then once you've got that one in, you can just simply delete the ones you don't want by clicking here. So we can just delete Panda nice and easily like that. For the background, so again, we're of course going to that background tablet, and I've already built this in, but you can see if I just go into the section here, costumes. So remember, you can select the backgrounds from adding here, but just to display all the ones that I use, and by going into this costumes area, it'll give you the view of all the backgrounds that you've added from this section here. So you can see I've added in 5 different backgrounds for 5 different scenarios of where Parrot will be traveling to. And to go back to the Sprites tab, I'll talk you through a little bit of what I've done for the coding, show it in action, and come back to it in more detail. But you can see this one here is really similar to what we were just doing with Panda. So we've used that move steps again. We were getting it to change between the different next costumes, exactly like we were just practicing with Panda. That's going to create the flying effect of the Parrot. This time, if the sprite touches edge, it's actually now, rather than bouncing straight away, it's actually changing to the next backdrop. Okay, so those 5 backdrops, each time Parrot touches the edge, it will change to the next backdrop in the sequence. So the next backdrop on those 5 that I and it will then actually bounce, so it travels back the other way. And I've set the rotation style again left to right, so the Parrot's going to be flying left to right as we go through. What I've also done here is I've created different things to happen when the background changes. This is how I've decided to try and tell Parrot's story. Now, the kids could go about this in lots of different ways. They could just be talking through what Parrot is seeing, where they're going as it's going through. They could just use their speech, just telling the story to whoever they're playing their animation to as they're working through. We could, of course, use our say blocks. So these are something that we've used quite a lot on the previous tutorials for different actions. We could just get the Parrot saying where they've been, what they're seeing as they go along. But what I've gone for is playing sound. Okay, so I'll come back to how I've done that in a second and how I built this up. You can see hopefully straight away that I've got these if-then statements. So if the backdrop is 1, do this. If drop is 2, do this, etc., etc. But I'll come back and talk you through exactly how I've done this in a moment. Okay, but let's see Parrot in action first of all. So I'm going to load this back up, hit green for it to play. Lots of space to fly in the grasslands. So many trees to perch on in the forest. Whew, I'd like to cool off in the sea here. It's cold in the mountains. Wow, look at all the stars in the desert. Okay, I'll stop it there. So hopefully you enjoyed that. That was obviously my speech I was using to tell the story of the different scenarios. So we saw the Parrot flying through the grasslands, the forest, the seaside, the mountains, and the desert. And I use sound files to help me tell that story rather than say blocks on the screen. So I want to talk you through how I did just one. See, I just forever loop and then lots of if-then statements depending on what background Parrot was traveling through. So the way I did that, of course, was still using my if-then statements. But I've used something a little bit different for the conditions. You'll see, rather than just being going straight to a condition statement, I've actually used an operator. So you'll be able to get to know these in more detail in later lessons, but there's no reason that you and the kids can't explore these now. I found this operator block in this section here. Okay, so what I have used, there's lots, well, before I go to this, there's lots of different operator blocks, but don't worry about knowing or understanding all of these straight away. You'll again be introduced to more of these as we go into later lessons, but the ones you could use straight away, quite easily, quite quickly, are these 3 here. So you've got the operators we can use to compare values in the sense of greater than, less than, or use the equal to. Really simple operator to use. And I brought this into my if-then block to use as the conditional statements. And what I put into there is the backdrop number. And I found that again from our sensing. So same place we found that touching mouse pointer or touching edge, but instead I've used this block here. So backdrop number of stage. I just put that into the operator here, and then selected what number I wanted it to send. So I, again, within those different backgrounds, I have got background number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5. As simple as that. So I can select which one I wanted to sense. So it could be number 1. And then once it sensed number 1, I wanted it to play a sound. So they were found from the sound file here. And I can bring in the play sound until done icon. Lots of different sounds built in. But then they could explore those. But what I did to create those recordings of what I wanted Parrot to say, to tell us a little bit about where he was visiting, I used this function here, the record function. So you can basically use this. If I just press record now, it record what I was saying, put that into my sound library for me to then select within the drop-down menu here. So that would have been saved after recording within the library. I could rename it to whatever I wanted and select that within the drop-down to play for myself. What I also did was bring in a wait block, a wait so many seconds. So this is the same process. I don't know if you remember from the last lesson, the penalty kick, we had to use wait for blocks to make sure the movement of the sprites all matched up correctly within the animation to make it look as if the ball was being kicked by the sprites or hitting the post at the right time. So I've done that as well to make sure the timings are correct for Parrot going across the different stage areas. And I basically repeated that 5 times for all 5 different backdrops and playing different sounds. Okay, so again, hopefully that makes sense. I'll just play that quickly for another couple of seconds to make sure that So
lots of space to fly in the grasslands.
Parrot in the grasslands. Then
so many trees to perch on in the
forest. And seaside.
I'd like to cool off in the sea here.
And so on. But I'll stop it there. But hopefully that's making sense how that was all working together as the code. So that's just my example. Kids can go whatever route they want to with this to create whatever they want. I will be providing you with this example as a starting point, so you can show that to the kids and they can maybe use this and adapt it if they want that support, or again, they can just go into creating whatever they want within these suggestions. But again, if they want to try something completely different, let them. It's all about encouraging them to explore whatever they want to do. But if they want more support on that as well, of course, on top of the initial suggested activity, we have some, what I've also forgot to mention in this, while I was using the next backdrop within this, I did talk about the next backdrop. You can just have it rotating from one to the other in order, or you can get very specific. So you can switch backdrop to previous backdrop or a specific number, depending on what works best for you. There's multiple ways you can control the backdrop within those programming tiles for that. I just wanted to show you that. Sorry, lockstep. So you can see next backdrop or switch backdrop, so you can get specific on exactly what backdrop you want it to switch to. But again, so we're going on to the extension. This is just another example of where they could go on top of what they've already created. No reason they can't have a go whatever they want, but the suggestion here is that if they do have more time available, they can add in other characters. So other characters which Parrot meets as he's going on his travels to the different places, and have all sorts of other things being executed using those conditional statements within the if-then block. So they can get creative whatever they want. One of the suggestions is, though, using other characters. Again, I just want to give you a quick example of how I have done that. So I'm going to switch to another example program, which again, I'll be supplying to you. I'm not going to say what I've done here. Okay, so this is a really simple adaptation. You can see I've got the same code I was using in the last activity. The only main change I've done is for one of the backdrops, I've brought in a new character. So I've added in a new sprite here, the bear sprite, and he's going to be activated when there is if drop of stage equals to number 2, which is the forest backdrop, and the bear sprite is going to display themselves and say hello. Simple as that. As an example, we could do this, all sorts of different sprites for all the different backgrounds, and we could get them doing different things as part of it. Maybe they start to move around on the stage themselves, or they do something if Parrot flies into them or near them. Again, up to the kids, but just let's quickly show you this one in action. So really similar to what I was doing on the last one, but let's just play green and watch this go.
Lots of space to fly in the grasslands. So many trees to perch on in the forest. I'd like to cool off in the sea here.
Okay, now I'll stop it there. Hopefully you saw the main change, which is when the uh, Parrot flew into the forest area, we saw our friend Bear pop up and say hello to Parrot on his travels. Which is really basically start to extend onto. They could get even more creative with this, getting those new sprites or new friends as Parrots meeting to animate in lots of different ways, using the effects blocks that we've learned about, using these new if-then statements, the rotation blocks and the bounce blocks. You can use those in combination with all of this as well. So they can really get creative on how they bring all these animations together during Parrot's travel. But again, I hope that's given you a good idea and inspiration of what they can start to achieve within this lesson. And again, I'll be sending that example program as a starting point, as a reference point for the kids as well. Okay, so we're almost coming towards the end. We always want to make sure that the kids obviously share what they've created. So when they have got through this, encourage them to share with you, communicate what they've done, why they've done it, what story they're trying to tell with Parrots, where Parrot's flown to, what they've seen, who they make sure they're hitting that effectively to you at the end of the process. And of course, we've always got our quiz at the end to help consolidate that learning. So we've got another few questions for you to answer. As always, all I want you to do is imagine to yourself what the answer to these questions are, and I will reveal the answer. So the question here is, which of the programs below can make the character speak hello for 2 seconds? I know we only were introduced to these briefly, but you can see within these programs, we're using those operator blocks within the if-then. So we want to imagine which of these will get the character to speak hello for 2 seconds. So take a close look at what is being stated within these operator blocks. Which one of these do we think is going to get the character to speak hello? Hopefully we got this right, but it is actually answer C. So if you think about what's actually being said in these conditional statements, the operator blocks of the conditional statements, the only one really here would be is this one. If 70 is greater than 50, then say hello for 2 seconds. And that is true. 70 is greater than 50. If we go through these, if 50 equals 20, that won't work because 50 is not equal to 20. If 20 is greater than 50, that won't work because 20 is not greater than 50. And then same again here, if 50 is less than 20, that's not going to work because again, 50 is not greater than 20. This was the only one that would work for that if-then statement with the conditional block. So the condition that was being set was if 70 is greater than 50, which is true. So that's what's going to get hello to say for 2 seconds. Again, hopefully that makes sense and we all got that one correct. Next question is, what condition needs to be met to make the sprite disappear? Okay, so which condition needs to be met to make the sprite disappear? You'll see the different options here. So what can we see within the code here? What needs to happen to make the sprite disappear? Hopefully we've got the answer in our minds now. It is, of course, B. So when the roll touches the mouse pointer, the roll sort of means sprite. So that is another word for sprites. But you see here, if mouse pointer is touching, then hide the sprite. So that's what condition needs to be met to make the sprite disappear. So it's simply this proper description. When the roll touches the mouse pointer, that means a sprite. Okay, so hopefully we all got that one right. That's basically what we saw happen in that first demonstration with the panda sprite earlier on. And then last but not least, what's the shape of the conditional block? So which of these is the shape of the conditional statements block? So we've been using this a lot within this lesson. Hopefully you've got this one right straight away. It is, of course, A. So that is the shape of the conditional block, which we put within the if-then statements. And I'm sure that's starting to get ingrained into your memories already. But hopefully we've got all those 3 questions right. Okay, so thank you very much. That is bringing us to the end of lesson number 7 of Parrot Travel. Hope you've enjoyed that and found it useful, and I'm looking forward to using that with your kids. As always, when you do start to use, if you've got any questions, please do get in touch with us. In comments is info@creative-hut.com, as well as sharing what your work you're doing with Makeblock on their platform. Please do feel free to share examples of what you've been able to create, whether that be screenshots, photos, videos. Please tag us in our social media channels, and we'll be happy to do that for you. And of course, if you want to see anything else that we can help with, please visit our website here. So we will be sending through again the slides, full lesson plan for this activity we've been looking at, together with those example programs shortly. So hopefully all of that will help. But thank you very much again for joining the webinar. We'll be hopefully seeing you online for session number 8, which is going to be next Tuesday. You can see the full schedule on our website and our Eventbrite, so please feel free to sign up for all of the future lessons as well.